Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. What I'm about to tell you isn't so much about NDEs as it is about extremely particular happenings related to extrasensory perceptions. They help me realize that there might be something after the physical body dies. My parents moved to New Caledonia from northern France in 1978 to work. It's worth noting that none of them were religious, went to church, or were engaged in spiritual matters. The first event occurred when I was only 4 years old. They decided to drive to a car rally a few miles away on a Saturday afternoon while I was sleeping. I was programmed as a clock and normally did it from 14 hours to 17 hours without ever waking up in the meanwhile, as they preferred to depart when I was sleeping and return home before I woke up. They silently went while I was fast asleep. But after a while, I awoke unexpectedly and jumped out of bed. I realized I was alone but didn't panic. On the contrary, I was finally going to be able to accomplish what had always attracted me up until that point. Every morning, I would watch my father shave with a hand razor after applying shaving foam to his face with a shaving brush. Even though I was a flawlessly beardless little girl, I secretly longed to test this razor. So I went to the bathroom and climbed a short stool to look in the mirror. I took the razor and rubbed the blade on my skin on my right cheek. I panicked when the blood burst out all of a sudden. I recall yelling, "Mom," before seeing a gigantic screen in front of my eyes, as though I were 10 inches away from it. Then I saw my mother and father from behind, on the side of a dusty road where rally cars bounded in a thunderous scream. My mother shifted her gaze to me, as if she too had noticed me. "Kareen," she exclaimed to my father. "Something happened to Kareen. We have to leave." To which he responded calmly, "Ann, let's stay a little longer." Mom responded, "Oh well, I'll go alone." Then I noticed her approaching their car, afraid and crying, while Dad continues to enjoy the race with his camera in hand. When I was certain she was returning, the television abruptly faded out, and instead I saw my reflection in the mirror, my cheek bleeding. Reassured, I wiped my face with a piece of cloth and some water. Then I sat quietly on the porch, waiting for my mother. She came about 10 minutes later, her hair tangled, agitated, and driving like hell. She grabbed me, hugged me tightly, and asked if everything was okay. I admitted to using the razor and cutting myself with it. She didn't chastise me since she was happy to find I was fine. I was too young at the time to recognize that this mode of communication was odd, so I didn't say anything about what I witnessed. My parents made no mention of their desire to attend the car rally in front of me, so I had no idea they would be there. Because of my tension, I believe that was an instance of spontaneous telepathy. This can happen when two people are deeply bonded emotionally. We talked about it several years later, and when I asked if she saw me, she replied no, but she had a strong feeling that I wanted her to come back right away. My second encounter appears to be an NDE, despite the fact that it occurred during a wonderful slumber on the way back to France. In 1994, one of my pals died as a result of an overdose. Matthew was 21 years old at the time of the incident. His family was distraught, particularly his mother, with whom he had a tumultuous relationship in the past. She was angry and blamed herself for not being able to reconcile with him before his death. I didn't attend his funeral since I knew everyone at meet would be overcome with grief. I didn't know how to find reassuring words or whether to just shut up at the time. So I chose to be alone and send my most loving thoughts to Matthew. I wanted to believe he'd hear me anyway. I ran into his sad mother on the street 2 months later. She fell into tears when she saw me, like she did whenever she encountered friends of her missing son. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling compassion and pity for her. She stopped crying after a few minutes, her face torn by anguish. "Besides, you know, when I saw his lifeless body, he had a huge smile on his face," she explained, as if he was looking forward to his death. I couldn't find the words to console her or apologize for missing the funeral. In any case, She passed out during the funeral and did not notice the 200 people gathered around her at the cemetery. I returned home, distraught over Matthew. Then I dismissed the thought and went about my evening quietly. But then, in the middle of the night, I had a strange dream. In fact, I'm very convinced I lived it, not just dreamed about it. I imagined myself strolling through a gorgeous garden on a light gray pebble path. Amazingly, they did not sound under my feet. The brightness of the environment struck me. The light was very brilliant, strong but not blinding and pleasant. The colors were incomparable since we don't see them on Earth. Green grass, blue sky, flowers, everything seemed much more beautiful and alive. There were folks who were conversing quietly and smiling. They acknowledged me with a nod of the head and a smile before continuing their talk. They wore white robes with no belts up to their ankles. I felt at ease and secure. On the side of the road, I noticed a small white stone seat, similar to volcanic rock but white, with no back. I did not walk in the grass because it was so beautiful that I did not want to damage it. I sat and waited, convinced that someone was on their way to greet me, but I had no idea who. I heard the birds sing a tune that sounded similar to the birds down below. Even though I couldn't see them, they seemed to be aware that they were singing and being noticed. Matthew appeared on my right, heading down the trail. I was both shocked and delighted to see him. He got close to kissing me, and suddenly I saw him as I'd never seen him before. His face beaming with joy, peace, love, and bliss. He was dressed casually in loose jeans and a t-shirt with hefty safety boots, and he was dazzling. He was more gorgeous than the most beautiful bloom. He appeared to be a lovely new infant. I dashed up to him and hugged him. "Hello, how are you?" he asked. I responded that I was well, but his mother was very ill, and I hated him for the suffering he caused. "I know, Corinne. I'm sorry. But tell her I'm all right now," he said with a smile. "Tell her not to worry. I'm really happy here." Then he kissed me again, smiled at me, and told me, "We'll see each other again one of these days." For a guy who just died of such a stupid death, he truly looks pretty nice here, I thought to myself. The vision vanished at this point. When I awoke, I was certain that the dialogue I had was genuine and that I should take it seriously. I could see the colors, the structure of the garden, Matthew, and the characters' costumes, and I thought it was impossible for me to envision or produce these colors and tones with my poor little human brain. I do painting in my spare time, and I know what I'm capable of making or not. I didn't want to go meet Matthew's mother in person because the emotion would have overwhelmed both of us, so I wrote her a letter telling her how I met him in a dream and how well he was doing. I told her how gorgeous and happy he appeared, and she didn't need to worry anymore. I'm not sure how she took it, but I can only hope that my message brought her some solace. Later, I anonymously dropped Mr. Moody's book, Life After Life, in her mailbox. In a dream, I never saw my friend again, but I know we'll meet again. One of these days, he said. Later, I read descriptions of heaven written by others who've seen it in their NDE, and I believe I recognize some of the locations I was in. Color intensity, sentiments of serenity, love and joy, brightness and exceptional warmth all reminded me of this particular meeting. So I'm pretty sure I glimpsed a slice of heaven at Matthew's request. I believe he tried to console his mother, but she was lost in her grief at the time, so he couldn't reach her directly, and she would have become enraged. He probably chose me because he knew I'd find a way to make her believe me. I can only be excited to go back whenever I think of this meeting, even at this point in time. For this is heaven. I'm sure I'll die smiling as well. The most recent conscious experience is also not an NDE. My ex-husband's grandma died of systemic cancer a year after what I just stated. I knew her when she was dying of cancer. I didn't understand her because she only spoke Arabic. So when we met, she talked, and I discovered that her legs were causing her a lot of pain. so I massaged her for hours while she continued to speak in her native tongue. We had only known each other for 4 months. She then went back to Algeria to die. My ex-husband's cousin came over one evening and informed us that she had died. They both went, stunned, to see the rest of their family, leaving me alone in our apartment. I was in bed when I noticed a strong odor of incense next to me. The odor was concentrated near the bed. I got up to investigate the other rooms of the flat, but discovered nothing. The fragrance came only from beside the bed. I believed it was a trick of the light. The fragrance was gone after about 5 minutes. I became pregnant 2 months later. My ex-husband beat me when I was about 6 months pregnant, around 11 p.m. It was cold and rainy outside, with a strong wind. But I went away because I didn't know what else to do. I took refuge under a store's porch to cry. I suddenly noticed the same odor as when the grandmother died. There was a strong wind, and the smell of incense lingered on my skin until I stopped crying. When I understood this, I couldn't believe it was an illusion. I was comforted by an unseen power while feeling melancholy. So I returned to my flat, certain that whatever happened, I was not alone. I'm no longer with this aggressive man today. I've found real love, and my family life is wonderful. I've always felt that life is a temporary trip, a learning experience that can be both shocking and beautiful, and that the only thing that really matters is love between humans. These 3 occurrences taught me that the unseen exists among us and appears in our lives when we least expect it, but only if our hearts are open to receive it.